is the Northwest Connectory? It's been in place for several years, originally funded through a federal grant from the Defense Logistics Agency. You can see we've got strong partners now providing financial support from Business Bureau, from OMEP, the Portland Development Commission, and so very much focused on trying to strengthen and enhance the utilization of the Northwest Connectory as a tool. Not a tool that replaces face-to-face supply chain work, but a tool that really supplements it. It really does focus on that business-to-business interaction. I would stress the fact that this is a tool. It is not the only tool. Anyone who tries to use just the Northwest Connectory without doing the face-to-face work that's also required is not going to be successful. But it is, especially in this technological-driven age, a very important online buyer-supplier tool to locate other companies that you can do business with, whether they are above you as a prime contractor or whether they are below you as a supplier. Lots of great companies in there with a lot of capabilities and opportunities to partner with those businesses, which we'll hear more about in a few minutes. I think one thing that is worth noting is the type of businesses that really are ideal for the Northwest Connectory. This is not intended for grocery stores or retail or hospitality industry businesses. This is really ideal for any kind of traded sector business. Doesn't have to be a defense and security industry business, although there are many in there. But really any traded sector business, any manufacturer, any point in the supply chain, the value chain, really is has a place to get value out of the Northwest Connectory. As you can see on this graph, it really is valuable for folks wherever you are up and down the supply chain. If you are a prime contractor, or if you're a third-tier supplier, or anywhere in between, there is a place for you in the Northwest Connectory. And I think that it's unique in that aspect, that it's not targeted to any one industry. It's also unique in the aspect that it's geographically targeted just in the Northwest. It's also maybe unique that it doesn't cost you anything. You can have a profile, you can update your profile, you can do searches, accessing other business profiles, all at no cost. And so that makes it a really valuable tool, because the investment is just your time in adding or updating your profile and doing searches. Absolutely no cost to you. Details are really important, though, in the Northwest Connectory, because you will find wide range of companies that are in there, and a wide range of detail that is provided in each of those companies. The companies that find the greatest success in the Northwest Connectory are those that really do the work up front to add details to the profiles. Not just who they are, what they do, specifics like their code, they can be searchable, specifics like certifications they may have, unique capability they have. Maybe you're not just a general category of technology or products that they make or services they provide, but very unique, specific capabilities that someone may be looking for. So you have the option of having as few or as many of these categories in your profile. But details really do matter, and the more detailed information that you're able to provide, the more likely you're to find success in accessing other companies through the Northwest Connectory. This is a very specific example, and I think you'll see through this the different ways you can search, as well as the fact that details really do matter. This was an actual question we had posed from a Boeing program manager who was looking very specifically for a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business who was working in systems engineering, cable manufacturing, or light fab. This gives you a glimpse of, as we did the search, this gives you a visual glimpse of the types of companies that are in the Connectory. You can see they're geographically spread all over the Northwest. Not surprisingly, heavy concentration up and down the I-5 corridor, like the population of the Northwest. But you can also see several companies out on the coast, several companies in central and eastern Washington, and central and eastern Oregon, as well as some even into Montana and Idaho. So a broad range of companies. Right now we've got over 4,700 companies that are in the Northwest Connectory. So when Boeing is looking to do this search, these are the range of companies that are being searched. So I went ahead and ran a sample search for Boeing and plugged in just systems engineering just to see what we would get out. So of those 4,700 companies, 622 of those companies did some work that was pulled up related to systems engineering. But you'll recall that Boeing said they also wanted a service-disabled company. And so in the next search, we narrowed that down further and plugged in the additional qualification that it had to be a disabled veterans business enterprise. That knocked it down from the much broader 622 companies down to just 23 companies. Now it's important to note that there may have been more than 23 companies that are service disabled, but only 23 of those companies that had systems engineering capabilities noted their registration in the Northwest Connectory for being a disabled veterans business enterprise. And so this is one of those cases where it's key to remember that the more details you note in your profile, the more likely you are to pull up searches. But perhaps Boeing wanted companies that were geographically close to them. So of those 23 companies, we further narrowed the search and added in companies just in Oregon. Of those 23, 6 were in Oregon. The balance were probably mostly in Puget Sound. But this gives you a good example just by having a search term, a geographic sort, as well as a specific certification requirement, and utilizing this, utilizing all of these together, that narrowed immediately down to 6 companies. So you really do have the option of narrowing or broadening your search in a way that's going to be helpful for you and your business as you're trying to access partners or suppliers or prime contractors to work with. Let me go through several things that I think are important as you look at all these search mechanisms, because as you look back at this screen, you'll notice there are a whole bunch of word searches, and right above this it says word search. These are all the word search options that I'll go through, as well as a whole series of field searches. So on the word searches, it's important to remember that obviously you want to separate any terms you use with a space, but you don't need to use commas. You also don't need to use any kind of quotation marks. You'll see several quotation marks referenced further later in this presentation. Those are really solely for the benefit of making you able to see what words can be typed in. You don't actually need to use question marks. Just using the words with spaces, no commas, no quotation marks. But you'll notice that there were 4 word fields right there. The first one, all of the words. If you use all of the words, that just means all of those words are going to show up in the profile you're looking for, but not necessarily in that same order. If you use exact phrase, that takes it to a next level of specificity. That exact phrase, those exact words in the exact order in which you type them, will show up in the profile you're searching for. The next option, any of the words. That just means those words will show up in the profile, but not necessarily together or in the same order. You'll get a longer list if you use any of the words, because it will pull up any of those individual words, not necessarily requiring all of them like the first category does. And then the last word search, without the words. If for some reason you want to exclude certain profiles that contain certain words, I think that's pretty rarely used, but that may be that's an additional tool you've got there where you can exclude profiles that contain certain words or certain capabilities. Keywords definitely matter. Some of these may be intuitive, but they're probably worth noting in case they're not. Trying the obvious is really important. If you just list manufacturer, you're going to get a much broader range of companies as opposed to just saying precision sheet metal, where you will really boil it down to the types of companies that you're really looking for. Also using likely words. Companies are much more likely to have something like aerospace fabrics listed than, and this next phrase sounds like something my teenager might say, places near Portland that make cloth-like stuff for jets. You want to use the most likely words. You want to think through, if you are a company, what are the types of words and capabilities and products and services that you're likely to be listing in your profile, and you want to use those words to search. And then obviously being specific. Instead of just using a broad term like high-tech solutions, you really want to use something that's going to be much more specific to what you're looking for, like distributed information assurance. That means you're going to get a narrower list, but that means you're probably also going to get a list that is more specific to the types of products and services for which you're looking. Field searches. So if you go back to this screen, you'll notice that there are a whole series of field search options. There are some specific examples given under some of them. Others are not. You'll notice these two main categories within field search, the AND field search and the OR field search. And they really do have different functions. If you use the OR field search, that means you're going to be searching only for that first field that you enter. So maybe you're just looking for a specific county or just a particular zip code. You saw, as I did earlier, just a particular state. If you just want one of those, you want to just use the OR field. Whereas if you want to really use that AND function, that's going to give you the search for all the fields you entered. Again, as I noted earlier, you don't typically need to use commas when you're doing searches. This is one example, which is why it's noted specifically in that earlier screen. When you're searching for zip codes, in this case, you do want to use commas. So be looking for those specific clues and specific descriptors where it is appropriate. These are a few other tips that you may find useful as you're doing searches. As I said earlier, the more information you provide, the more fine-tuned of a search you're going to do, and the better results you're going to get. Using that intersection of those word and field searches together, as I did at the earlier example with the Boeing example, that will give you a greater way to refine down the specificity of the search you're doing. Using more generic terms will give you a broader net to cast to come up with companies that may be more valuable. As I may have mentioned earlier, searches are not case sensitive, so you don't need to worry about using capitalization or not. It just assumes everything is lowercase. Now stemming, where you've got a couple of those categories we talked about earlier, the all of the words and the any of the words options automatically use stemming. So that means if you type in the word engineer, it's going to yield you results that have any word that comes out from that root of engineer. The plural version of it, engineering. And so when you use all of the words and any of the words, the stemming will automatically be a part of the function of it. If you're using, however, the exact phrase or without the words, those two options from that previous screen, stemming is not going to be used. So if you type in engineer and you use exact phrase, you are just going to be pulling up those that explicitly use the word engineer and not those profiles that may use the words engineering or engineers. So that's an important functionality difference between those four different categories, between, on the one hand, all of the words and any of the words, and on the other hand, the exact phrase and without the words, those options. So again, this gives you a look back at that screen. It's just important to remember, I think, in all these, that the more specific you are, the more refined your search is going to be, but the fewer profiles you're going to pull up. That means your target, the bullseye of the potential customers and suppliers you're looking for, will be more narrowed. But in some cases, you may want to intentionally cast a wider net. It also, as you're looking at this and thinking about searching, it's also important for your own profile to remember that the more specificity you have in your profile, the more likely you are to be pulled up by others doing searches. So the more specificity you have in terms of capabilities, the more likely you are to be pulled up. In that respect, it is very much like this really does function exactly like a Google search, but instead of, if you did this same process on Google, you would pull up a whole bunch of Chinese companies who have these capabilities, whereas in the Northwest Connectory, you're going to pull up just Northwest companies. But the functionality of the search mechanisms are very identical to the way Google works. You just have more options to be able to choose and mix and match word and field searches here that you wouldn't necessarily have on Google. This gives you just a couple of examples that companies have experienced using the Northwest Connectory. Tiffany Scroggs at Washington PTAC gave a specific example here where she talks about a business contacting her looking for packaging support that would enable them to bid on a federal solicitation. She did a quick search in the Northwest Connectory, led her to a few options for that company. They were then able to bid on the job, win that job, and appropriately package their product for shipment to the Department of Defense. So that's a very specific example that you wouldn't even necessarily think about because it's not any kind of high-tech manufacturing. That example specifically was packaging to support a federal DoD contract. Another example that Rick Williams, who used to be with SAIC, which is now changed to Leidos Maritime Systems, he talks about how the Northwest Connectory has been useful in marketing their services. He routinely provides the web links so prospective clients can see their profile. He said SAIC, Leidos, has used the Northwest Connectory to locate suppliers and prospective team members. They recently competed for and received a grant for an engineering study with a team member they found on the Northwest Connectory. So a couple of specific examples, and you'll hear one in a moment from another company. But very different types of searches, very different types of companies in different parts of the Northwest, but still finding success through the Northwest Connectory. Let me switch over, and this video is not long. This is about literally a 1-minute video that will give you a further glimpse on some of the benefits of the Northwest Connectory, if the technology works.
The Northwest Connectory is an online buyer-supplier network. The Northwest Connectory was funded by Defense Logistics Agency for PNDC back in 2006. It uses Google search, so it'll search with all the capabilities, pull you 10 companies that can meet those capabilities, what certifications they have, how long they've been in business, things like that.
The Pacific Northwest Connectory has been a valuable tool for Axiom in that it provides a database of connected suppliers and prospective customers, which has enabled us to prospect more efficiently and effectively.
We uploaded our profile to Northwest Connectory and were solicited by multiple large companies such as NASA, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, who came to us work with RFQs that we would have never had exposure to. So Connectory gave us a platform and an opportunity to be exposed to some of these companies that would have taken years for us to develop.
So that gives you a small glimpse of a couple other companies that have successfully utilized the Northwest Connectory. I think one thing I noted at the very beginning, for those of you who dialed in early, you do have on the right side of your screen. Whoops. You gotta love YouTube, it automatically jumps to the next video. All right. At least it's not the ad from the Super Bowl where the young child dies, so we're thankful for that. You have a box on the right side of your screen for questions. If you've got specific questions based on issues that have come up, definitely feel free to just type them in your in that lower right side of your screen, and those will pop up on our screen, and we can answer those questions. I think, let's see, I thought there was one more. Yeah, so I think the bottom line, that gives you contact information for PNDC. We would really encourage you to make sure you have a profile in the Connectory. Looking down the list of the companies that are online right now, I see many of you already have profiles in Northwest Connectory. It also looks like many of those profiles have not been updated in a long period of time. So for those few of you who don't yet have profiles on Northwest Connectory, please make sure you get profiles. I think you'll find real benefit by being able to access partners and suppliers up and down the supply chain. For those of you who already have profiles, I definitely encourage you to look at your profile, see what additional certifications your company has added, see what additional equipment, products, services you may have added, see what additional detail you can provide to your profile that will make you more likely to show up in a search that may be done by other companies. There's a question about how you actually update your profile. We can actually give you a specific password where you can go on and do it directly, or it can be done if you just contact our office, and the details are obviously right on there on the screen. So you always have two options for updating your profile. You can do it directly, and once you have that password, you can then just do it at any point as you're adding new capabilities and services. But you also have the option at any point of just being able to contact us, and we can update or add information to your profile. So definitely feel free to contact us at any point. Other questions? Let's see. So there's a question about, is there any restriction on what type of company can be listed in the Connectory? In general, there are probably only two that come to mind. One, there's a geographic restriction. We're not going to list foreign companies. We're not going to list Alabama-based companies. But if you've got operations in the Northwest, your headquarters can obviously be in Alabama, but if you've got operations in the Northwest, you can be listed in the Northwest Connectory. And in terms of types of companies, again, if you are anywhere in the manufacturing, supply, and value chain, you're eligible to be listed in the Northwest Connectory. You can actually be the manufacturer. You can be the engineering services provider. You can be the designer. Again, the Connectory is not designed if you're a donut shop to be listed in there. It's not a retail business. But we are pretty, as long as you're in the Northwest, we are pretty flexible in approving profiles. There is a process where profiles have to be approved once you submit them, but it is very rare that companies have been rejected. That really the only two cases I can think of are where they're outside the Northwest and where they are where they are retail companies. There's a question about, are there affiliations in California? There actually is a very similar Connectory tool that serves Northern California and Southern California. So you'll notice if you go back to the search screen, you can choose several different Northwest states. Our focus has really been on trying to generate profiles from Oregon and Washington and utilization by Oregon and Washington companies. As that map earlier illustrated, you'll see that there are companies that are spread beyond just Oregon and Washington and other parts of the Northwest. You will not come up with California companies when you do searches, but there is a related search engine that instead of being northwestconnectory.com like this is, if you just go to connectory.com, you will find a database that does include it includes the Northwest companies as well as many California companies, and perhaps a couple other states as well. but it very much is a West Coast focused online buyer supplier tool at this point. Let's see. Are there additional questions? Oh, I do see several here. Okay. Someone is looking for government agencies looking for services. Does the Northwest Connectory search that? There are not governmental agencies currently listed on the Northwest Connectory. It is one of the things that we are looking at as we upgrade the Northwest Connectory, working with OMEP this year. We are looking at how can we not just identify the B2B, the business-to-business supply chain opportunities, but how can we also identify, obviously, more of the government-to-business. A lot of our face-to-face training events are very specifically focused on helping with the government-to-business work. So you'll find as you come to a lot of our face-to-face training events, like the Government Contracting Conference in early April at Camp Withicum, like the Aerospace and Defense Symposium at Joint Base Lewis McChord in late May, you'll see many governmental agencies that will be at those trying to discuss and outline government-to-business procurement opportunities. But the Northwest Connectory currently is just a business-to-business tool. Although, as I said, that's one of the things we're looking at upgrading. Let's see. There's a question about, is HVAC refrigeration service and repair a good fit? Absolutely. Anything that's in that manufacturing or service repair, absolutely. That'd be completely legitimate for the Northwest Connectory. And some of those companies that provide those services will have broader capabilities across other industries and products as well. But those would definitely be acceptable and viable for the Northwest Connectory. There's a question about the Connectory and the Northwest Connectory. Are they interconnected? Yes and no. If you search on the Northwest Connectory, you will only come up with Northwest companies, which is exactly what we're trying to encourage. Northwest companies to do more business with other Northwest companies. But if you go into connectory.com, you will have all the profiles that are in the Northwest Connectory, as well as those broader profiles of California companies and a couple other states. So if you intentionally want to do a broader search, definitely feel free to just drop the NW, and the rest of the website is the same. It's just connectory.com instead of northwestconnectory.com. You'll get all the Northwest companies, but you'll get a much broader reach of other companies as well. Let's see. There are several questions coming in. I answered that one. There's a question about, what about food and beverage industry ingredients? Are these from manufacturers or farms or both? I think anything that where you're providing, it sounds like the questioner is asking about products that you'd be providing. If you're providing products, if you're producing products, again, in the Northwest, those are very likely to be viable for the Northwest Connectory. Because you may be, if you're growing particular food, that may be viable for a customer at the Department of Defense or a military base as much as it is for a local school district or a retail business. So depending on what exactly it is, assuming you've got a broad reach in the food or beverage that you're producing, that could very well be a viable company to be a profile in the Northwest Connectory. Let's see. There's a question about, where can you view the activity surrounding your profile to give you an idea of how well your company's profile is being received, or if you need to add or make profile more detailed to attract more companies? That's a great question, and that's exactly one of the things that we are looking at as we plan to technologically upgrade the Northwest Connectory this year with, again, as I mentioned earlier, working with OMEP. That you do not have a good option right now of seeing exactly who's viewing your profile. I think probably the best test is if you are being contacted by folks, and in some cases they may contact you and not say that they found out about you from the Northwest Connectory. So it's not an ideal answer. It's one of the reasons we're looking at how we can add on that technological tool to be able to allow companies to better assess who is viewing them, who is accessing them because they've been referred by the Northwest Connectory. But currently that is not a tool that is easily accessible through the Northwest Connectory. We are able to see the Google Analytics of utilization of the Northwest Connectory overall. And one of the things we've noted is as we do face-to-face supply chain events, we see an uptick in Northwest Connectory utilization, which is why we've really come to see the key nature of having those two tools utilized together. Because if you're doing the work online of having a profile in the Northwest Connectory, updating your profile regularly, and utilizing the Northwest Connectory for your own supply chain and partnering needs, that coupled with the face-to-face work of really getting out, meeting with potential suppliers, meeting at each of these supply chain events, we have several prime contractors that are there outlining opportunities that they have coming down the pipeline for looking for suppliers. So those two in tandem, that continued face-to-face work of doing face-to-face events and meetings, as well as utilizing the online tool, is really the optimal way to make sure your company is getting out there and finding success. Are there other questions? I think I have answered every question I received. Let me just pause for one more minute. As Suzanne just noted, this is the last chance for questions. We have recorded this webinar, so it will be available if you want to go back and utilize it or forward it on to other folks at your business that may find value in utilizing the Northwest Connectory. As I said, we're also going to be having a series of supply chain events that we will make sure you are all notified about. They're going to be spread across the Northwest over the course of this year, so you'll have some more of those face-to-face opportunities to supplement the B2B work you're doing online. But I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think, unless any come in right now, we are going to sign off. Again, on behalf of the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition and Business Oregon, our partner, we want to thank you very much for participating and urge you to connect, find suppliers, find vendors, find partners through the northwestconnectory.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.